What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Today, I kind of want to talk about and react to some of the players' responses, the players' reactions to the two losses against the Indiana Pacers and the Houston Rockets. At the end of the day, these are the two losses that at the moment everybody seems to be talking about in relation to the Chicago Bulls, whether it's positive or negative. This is what we're currently talking about, and until we find that bounce back game that we're all looking for, we all thought it was coming against the Rockets. As soon as we find that bounce back game, I'm sure it will go straight to the narrative of winning those games. But these players did come out and talk about some of the losses of the Chicago Bulls, what could be done, what could be better, and what obviously is not being done properly for the Chicago Bulls. Some of the really interesting things here that I do want to talk about. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls reaction. Some of these players and coach, to be fair, reaction to some of the losses. The Indiana Pacers lost, the Rockets lost. Of course, I made a video about what I think is going wrong for the Chicago Bulls, but it's really interesting to see where these players and coaches' mindset are at in terms of the NBA season so far. Now, one of the biggest quotes that I took away from this article, this is obviously an article for NBC Sports Chicago, so again, if you feel like reading that yourself, feel free to do so. But one of the quotes that did come out in that article is a quote that says from Alex Caruso, "I think it's really just a collective lack of sense of urgency from us. We haven't done a good job of bringing the level of detail and attention and care factor that it takes to win NBA ball games." So for me, this comes down to energy. I think energy is probably the biggest thing to take away in relation to that quote, that once the energy is not there, then other things are not going to be there, like the attention. You don't bring the energy, you're not going to have the attention to detail, you're not going to have the care factor, you're not going to have that sense of urgency that we all really expect from the Chicago Bulls so far this season. And I think these last two games, we definitely didn't have that sense of urgency. We didn't have that care factor that I think many of us have been expecting from the Chicago Bulls. And it's definitely something that I don't see as a permanent issue. Of course, when you lose two on the bounce right now, I think the Bulls are going to have the most sense of urgency in the world in the next game against Orlando. They'll have to have that sense of urgency because it's definitely something that we've had for the most part of the season, and I don't see it going away permanently for the Chicago Bulls. We will get that sense of urgency back, and we will find a way to pick on the level of detail and to have that care factor once again. And it all comes down to bringing the energy and being ready to play when the ball is tossed up in that first quarter. You've got to be ready to play, and I think that's a big part of what Alex Caruso has been talking about. You have to be ready to be playing when the ball is tossed up in the middle of the court for the first quarter. It all starts then. It starts before then in training, but the game starts then, and we have to be ready to play from the very beginning. Billy Donovan also said something that I thought was very interesting, and he said in a quote, "I'm a big believer of the best players and best teams are internally motivated. They're not externally motivated. They don't just go out and look at the scoreboard. They don't go out there and somebody says something to them or something happens that excites them. There's got to be an internal drive. We have shown signs of doing that, but we haven't shown signs of doing it consistently enough." So that's Billy Donovan questioning, I guess, the motivation of the Chicago Bulls. And again, comes down to energy, comes down to motivation, comes down to ready to play. And again, this is something I said in the last video. Zach LaVine said, "Win by any means necessary," which means every single game you have to come out with the motivation to win the game. You can't take games off. That's something else that's been talking about in this article that I won't mention too much. Billy Donovan said, "We are not that good of a team to pick and choose when we can have when we play our NBA games." Billy Donovan said that in a quote, and it's something that makes a lot of sense. But of course, this comes down to motivation, and Billy Donovan has now questioned kind of his team's motivation in terms of the Chicago Bulls. There are signs that we could be eternally driven to motivate ourselves, but it's not been consistent enough. Consistency is the key word there, ladies and gentlemen, as well. And in my opinion, the last quote I'm going to be talking about in relation to this article is from Nikola Vucevic, the big man himself, because he says something I think we can all agree with, ladies and gentlemen, and it just is a very important quote that he did say, and it's something that I believe is well and truly in the players' minds as well and the coaching staff's minds. He said in a quote, I think at times we get stuck a little bit and get away from what works for us. But we also have the players who are really great isolation players. We have to find the balance. That is spot on, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion. That is the quote to take away from all quotes. We have to find the balance between doing what we know and relying on isolation. I've always said it and I will always say it. Isolation in small doses will never be bad for any team. It just adds another spark to an offense that could already work so well if we're more team ball movement orientated. But he specifically targeted what many people have been saying in his comments below, and he said that we are getting away from what works for us. And this is a key example. If you go look at some of our losses, we end up having a strong first half and a really poor second half. The Warriors, the Portland Trailblazers, obviously the game against the Houston Rockets. We've had strong first halves, but we've also had lackluster second halves, and we tend to get away from what works for us. That might not be every single game. There have been some games where we get away from what we do and we win those games. There are games where we have strong second halves and not first halves, and we still win those games. Boston is an example of that. So he's targeted something really important here, and the key word is balance. And that comes down to the coaching staff, and it comes down to those players that have to really learn what it's going to be like to stick with the game plan, stick with what works for you. Don't always go away on a tangent or have the next shot mentality for Zach and DeMar, or if we're going to do isolation constantly for those two players. It has to be a balance, and that's something that I find very important. And the fact that an all-star center on this team, someone that he himself has been struggling with, has come out and said that they are getting away from what works best for them, and that they can find ways to find a balance between isolation and team ball movement. It's really important because now he's said that publicly to the world. That is a quote that's been released to the world, ladies and gentlemen. So not only are the fans thinking about this situation of too much isolation, not enough ball movement, not enough players involved, these players are looking at it now too. These players have a same mindset as the fans. These players are thinking about that. So hopefully that thinking leads into training, leads into learning, and leads into not seeing too much isolation, not seeing too much of this, I guess, getting away from what works for us. These are the things that we need to look at, and Nikola Vucevic has struck a nerve, in my opinion, for many fans. He's spoken on things that I think we can all agree on. They also talked about size in this article as well, but again, there's not too much we could do in relation to the size at this point. I think the best thing we can do is that depending on the games that we have, we need to rotate the starting lineup to try and get a little bit more size in there. But outside of that, I'm not really sure what else we can do outside of just switching the lineups up at times in relation to the size issues until we go out and make a trade, if we make a trade. But that is definitely something to keep note of, ladies and gentlemen. And that's something that our best center right now, one of the better players on this team, has come out and said. So that makes me believe that this is on the players' minds and it's on the coaching staff's minds. I don't think he would have said anything like that if that wasn't an issue that they truly believe is an issue for the Chicago Bulls. Vucevic would never say something, in my opinion, that is not an issue. He clearly thinks this is an issue, which means I think this team thinks this is an issue. So that's a good sign, in my opinion. They know an issue, and hopefully they can continue to work on it to the point where it's not an issue. And if we can figure it out, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to lead to a lot more success in the future. And obviously, with more issues that will come out for the Chicago Bulls, some of the issues we've not found yet, some of the issues that are there, but we don't have much we can do about it at the moment. All of the situations in terms of the offense, the defense, what's gone wrong for the Chicago Bulls, I hope they can all be rectified and they can all be properly fixed, so we can have a successful season going forward. This is a 2-game losing streak. It's just a lapse that I don't think any of us want to remember, and hopefully that next win, whenever it comes, will be that kicking boost for the Chicago Bulls to go on and continue to win some very important games that we have in the future. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this article. Again, there are many quotes out there that I have not mentioned. There are many things that I haven't mentioned in relation to this article, but these are the quotes that I took away from this game specifically as to why I believe the Chicago Bulls are struggling, and it's good to see that some of these players are seeing the same things as well. It's not us. It's not just the fans that we don't know much about basketball, whatever the case may be. The players and the coaches know more. It's not that at all. In fact, it looks like the fans, the coaching staff, and the players seem to be on the same page in terms of some of our issues. And now it's just time to figure out how we can resolve them. And I hope we can do it. Have a wonderful and safe day. The next game is against the Orlando Magic in a mere few hours. I cannot wait to see if we can bounce back, and we have to get a win here. We can't lose to the Pacers, the Rockets, and the Magic. That's 3 games against negative record teams. That, in my opinion, is just a really bad look on this team. And as good as we are, we don't have a situation right now where we can afford to lose easy games. We're not in a good place in terms of the Eastern Conference. I know the standings might show otherwise, but we could potentially fall away close to the play-in tournament if we continue to lose. But if we continue to win, we push ourselves further up in the Eastern Conference standings. So it's important that we win and we do not let other teams that are below us continue to raise up and eventually catch us. We have to keep our foot on the pedal and we have to keep pushing forward. Take care.